All right, welcome, revelers. This is Off the Rails, Right versus Left, the podcast that we do because we think the left is evil. I'm Rob B.
And I'm Brad Lee.
And I'm Brian G.
And we are Off the Rails, Right versus Left. Again, we're doing this show because we think everybody needs to know that the left is evil.
Classic.
Welcome to Right versus Left. I'm Rob B. With me, as always, is
Brad Lee, Off the Rails.
And our local leftist sympathizer,
Brian G, leftist sympathizer.
Woo, woo.
So we're off the rails, right versus left. We're doing this podcast because we think the left is evil and everybody needs to know it. So today, what we're going to be talking about is our government, because nobody seems to understand what our government actually is, because everybody keeps talking about democracy.
Which
democracy.
Which there are parts of our government that function as a democracy, but we are a representative constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. As a matter of fact, go ahead.
The democracy levels would be more local governments, not the federal.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, even like everything at the federal level is like specifically set up to be representative.
Yep.
Well, aren't we a constitutional republic with a democratic process? No.
Well, we're a representative process in the federal.
Yeah, because on the federal level, because there's actually nothing really. Okay, so the House of Representatives, that is elected by democracy. The Senate is elected by democracy, but the two bodies function differently in order to keep mob rule from being a problem. So like, and the reason that they set it up that way to begin with is because there was the concern that the concerns of the cities were going to supersede the concerns and interests of the rural areas.
Well, South Carolina and the other states were worried that New York and some of the bigger cities would rule over everything.
Right. So that's why they didn't do everything on a popular vote. Like even the presidency is decided by the Electoral College with the intention that presidential candidates will have to go to every state and every area and try and get those votes in order to get the conglomeration of votes they need to be elected in the Electoral College.
Well, just think of it now. If it was democracy and not electoral votes, the president would be able to skip everything that we call flyover country. So everything in the interior U.S., he could completely ignore, wouldn't care what they wanted, what they needed. He would just hit New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, the major big cities, and skip everything else.
Right. So, and back then the idea was like the more rural states would get ignored, or the less populous states. Like even back then, Vermont and Maine were not particularly populous states.
So a constitutional republic is a system of laws to protect citizens and contain government. Tyranny of democracy is not an idle statement. 51.1% may force its will on 49.9% in a democracy.
Right, which is exactly why our government set up the way it is.
So
like
the difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy is a democracy is run by people and republic is run by the laws of constitution.
Right.
Yeah, we're regulated by laws instead of by mob rules. by
Right.
hey,
And
you
we
have
use the democratic
1% of the votes, so
process
you can decide
to
whatever
get
you
those
want.
laws.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a democracy, if 51% said, you know what, I'm going to kill off the other 49%, well, that'd be the law of the land because 51% ruled it. Well, in the constitutional republic, we now have laws that say 51% cannot do that.
So when the
Right,
Supreme
and
when the Supreme Court says that
Go ahead, Bob.
no, go ahead, Brad.
so when the Supreme Court says that there is no right to abortion on the federal level and it should be adjudicated by the states would then have the people vote on whether or not there's restrictions, right? And that would be democracy working. Am I missing something? That's right? That's democracy working.
Yeah, I guess I didn't get the whole construction of your statement there.
So like the Supreme Court, right, of the judicial branch of the federal government says the federal government should not be a part of whether or not a woman has the right to kill its babies. And then it pushes it back down to the states, and the states decide what laws they want. And the way they find those laws is by putting in legislation and having the people vote on it, right? Like they just did in Montana.
Well, what I would say is that the Supreme Court didn't say the woman doesn't have the right. She said the federal government doesn't have the right to tell a woman that
right.
She cannot have an abortion.
That's what I was getting at. But they said that it was up to the states.
Yeah, they said it's up to the states. They didn't say the woman doesn't have the right.
And
just clarifying. I'm just
right. And
they
so
said the states have the right to do it individually, not the federal government.
Right. And when the people vote on the laws of their state, is that not a democratic process?
Well, that's
the state
local governments are the democratic. Local governments, not the federal.
Right. Exactly. Like the states and the local governments, when they hold elections like they just held in Montana for the right to kill a baby, and like they did in Kansas, the people voting on those laws, that's democracy working. Right. So democracy is not dead just because the Supreme Court said we're the federal government and we shouldn't have anything to do with this. Yeah, which is what the pro-choice people are saying in the first place, is the federal government shouldn't be involved in their choice or their body. Right.
Yeah, they just pushed it back to the state. Yes.
Right. Which is democracy working in a constitutional republic.
Well, and specifically the reason that it applies for this case is the whole purpose of our Constitution is to limit the power of the federal government.
Right.
Otherwise, there would not be one United States. There would be 50 individual nations.
Yeah.
And so that was the intention, was to form. I mean, if you look at every other colony, because all of the colonies were independent colonies, they decided to band together and form one nation. But in doing that, they wanted to maintain their autonomy that they had as independent colonies to decide how they live their lives.
Right.
So the reason we have the two different houses of Congress is to balance out. So on one hand, you have the population-based House of Representatives, which does operate. It's still representative, but it is more representative by population. So a bigger state is going to have more votes.
And when you say bigger state, you mean a bigger population of
a bigger population state. Yeah. Right. So now on the flip side, the Senate is 2 representing each state. And the reason for that being is that then gives
equal Senate.
Each state an equal say, no matter what their population is. So in the Senate, Wyoming, with the smallest population, has the exact same power as California, which has the highest population. And that was intentional, because then the idea was to gridlock Congress so they can't do a bunch of stuff and push things through. They have to get a broad consensus that's in the best interest, not only of the population, but also the broad consensus of the states in general.
Okay. Which is why the Electoral College is important and not the popular vote when it comes to federal elections.
Well, yeah, if you get rid of the Electoral College and go back to a popular vote, then it's mob rules. We don't have a constitutional republic anymore. The mob decides on who the president is. The mob decides on everything.
Right. So, and then if you look at most of the state houses and the state senates, they're put together the same way. Like each county has 2 representatives, and then there's House representatives determined by populations. So even at the state level, it's a representative government. So the only true democracy that actually happens in the United States is on like local ballot measures and local elections. And that's it. And that's why, because presumably the people in this small area are going to have like interests.
Right.
So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
no,
as a constitutional
I'm tracking.
republic, yeah, as a constitutional republic, and that was the whole problem with Roe v. Wade. They usurped the power of the states when our Constitution very clearly like dictated government, and just in case they left something out, they made it clear that if it's not in the Constitution, then the power belongs to the states. So, and then like if the state doesn't take action, then the power, and it's not in the state's constitution, then the power would revert to the counties and the cities. And the lower you get, the more actually democratic the process is. And that was the idea, is as much as possible, they wanted the decisions and the power to reside at the local level. So does that follow through?
Mm-hmm.
But on a grander scale, when you have such a large area, which you have to remember back then, like the United States was a huge country.
Yeah.
So like if you wanted to have sorry about the creaky door there.
Only a couple of countries in the world that are larger.
Yeah. So like even now there's one.
Well, Russia, Canada's larger.
No, it's not. We actually have.
Okay, according to every website on the internet.
So yeah, so that's I mean, so that was kind of the purpose, is to balance everything out. And like the citizenry hates constitutional or like congressional gridlock, but the whole entire Constitution was built, formed, and based upon that gridlock. It was designed to be ridiculously difficult for anything to happen because they were only supposed to be in office for 2 months. So they had a limited amount of time to build a consensus and get anything done. There weren't supposed to be full-time members of Congress. There weren't supposed to be full-time governments.
You mean that wasn't supposed to be their job?
No.
That's weird.
They were supposed to be citizen servants serving the citizenry.
Yep, the United States is the 3rd largest country landmass-wise.
So you're saying there's no reason for us to be paying them to be in government?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I think our country would be a lot better off if they had stayed limited to 2 months of work every year.
I agree.
It was never intended for people to be able to have their careers all in politics. It was meant to be somebody builds their life and then comes up and does something to improve their country once they've
exactly. And they might go like local level, then state level, then national level, but that would generally be after they've already accomplished something in life.
Yep.
So the problem is now we've got a bunch of career politicians that all they accomplished in life was their liberal arts degree in political sciences, or they completed a law degree and immediately went into politics. Yeah.
So is that why the Democrats are always doing stuff that isn't constitutional or based on the Constitution? Are they just stupid and reading the Constitution incorrectly, or
As far as what? Like
as far as like, okay, let's see. Hold on a second. There's so the Democrats are all about diversity. In 2020, the Democrat Party had 3 white presidential candidates over 70 years of age competing to be their 2020 presidential nominee. Obviously, Kamala Harris was in there, but she was like the first one out, right?
Yeah, because she couldn't even get 1% support in her own state.
So let's say former Vice President and Senator Joe Biden. No, this is what he said. No ordinary American cares about constitutional rights. That was the statement he made. President Obama has not seen fit to support his former vice president in 2020. This article I'm reading must have been before the presidential election. Senator Bernie Sanders says Social Security has nothing to do with the deficit, July 12th, 2019. Senator Bernie Sanders affirms his support for abolishing the Electoral College during his presidential town hall, whilst his last honeymoon was taken in Russia by choice.
Bernie?
Oh, he's a commie bastard, 100%.
Elizabeth, oh, of course. Well, he's a Democrat socialist with like AOC.
No such thing.
He's a Democrat communist.
Senator Warren, having an abortion is no different than having one's tonsils removed. I plan to be the last American president to be elected by the Electoral College. I took a DNA test for her to find out she was white. Dude, what?
Who's this, Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like they don't support the Constitution. But nowhere in the Constitution does it guarantee a right to death, but it does guarantee a right to life.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life being the first word, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't understand how they can swear an oath to uphold a constitution that they don't believe in, or let alone understand.
Well, and then over there,
Because
half the country votes for him.
And they're always screaming about democracy. Clearly, they don't understand that we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. But then they want to pick and choose their words. Like Biden says, there's a threat to our republic. And then there's a threat to democracy. He's always flip-flopping on that almost as much as Fauci does.
Well, and I want to point out an important part there is constitutional.
Oh, by the way, has anybody noticed whether or not our video's still up?
I can check right now. I saw that it got posted.
While we're at it, everyone, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, help us out with the algorithms.
Yes, hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted every time that we put out new content. It's
yeah, and welcome to all the new viewers. We're getting a ton of new viewers every week.
No views yet, but it's up. It's only been up for an hour, so.
Okay. They probably screened that thing like 10 times. Trying to find an excuse to pull it.
No, but like I said, I just want to point out that a very important part of the republic is constitution, because Rome was a republic, but it was not a constitutional republic.
Right. And that's why
we're ruled by our laws that are laid out in the Constitution.
But also each state has its own constitution as well.
Yeah. Because we form the states just like we did the federal government to limit power, so the state can't rule whatever they want over all the other. So one big city, so like in New York City couldn't rule over everybody else in New York. Right.
Which is why those states have a certain amount of House seats and a certain amount of Senate seats.
Yeah. Yeah. But New York City rules by law. which is every city rules by mob. It's a democracy by city, but not by state or by federal government.
Right.
So, I mean, you can see what happened when there's not the Constitution. So how did Rome fall? Rome stopped being a republic when Caesar came in with his army and took it over and became Caesar.
Right.
Became the emperor. So a general cannot just walk into Washington D.C. and declare himself emperor because it's against the Constitution.
Right.
I mean, he could try, but the Constitution will block him.
For that reason.
Yeah, and that's why we have a Constitution to declare what the laws are and what we can and can't do.
How long has America been America? Since 1776, right?
Yeah.
Well, when we became a country, yes.
Right. Well, and they call it an idea. At least I've heard former Vice President Joe Biden stating such, that America is just an idea.
Yeah.
And that the Constitution is a living document, right? And it can be changed, and the rights aren't.
Well, that's the big thing about progressives and about conservatives. Is progressives believe the Constitution is a living document that changes as history changes, as time changes. It's to be interpreted on what would the founders have meant by today's standards, and you can't do that.
No, it should be interpreted as written. There's a reason why bear arms was put into the Second Amendment, right? So because that they knew that the weapons would be changing. I mean, look,
well,
like,
it wasn't bear muskets.
right.
You know, it was
And it wasn't like you could go cut off some bear's arms and you can always have bear arms.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm down with having bear arms. I wish I could get my arms as big as a bear.
They said arms because they knew
that
that technology improved, because when they first started, they had muzzle loaders, and they didn't really have cannons. So they knew that the weapons were going to advance.
Yeah, they had cannons, and that's where, like we said in a past podcast, during the revolution, that's where that's where our military that was fighting that's where we pulled most of our cannons were from civilian ownership.
Right, and the people
owned the cannon, they brought them with them when they got into the militia.
Right, and the privateers having their boats and stuff wanted to make sure that they could have cannons, and of course the president was like, "Yeah, you can have cannons. Why wouldn't you be able to have cannons?"
Rob laughs there. I saw that.
Well, I was like, the reason for my smile was like the actual creation of privateers.
Right.
So, like, it was for soft proxy wars was the intent of it. Like the British started using privateers to attack enemy vessels, so they wouldn't be actively declaring war.
Yeah.
But then they were paying the pirates to go raid the ships.
Yeah.
So, and then of course we, like many things that came from the British, we used that too during the Revolutionary War on up. So,
well, even just like private businesses with their ships, that were performing trade, they wanted to be able to protect their ships.
Yeah. So, and it used to be ships protected themselves. We didn't have this massive, expansive navy that would protect them at sea.
Right.
So now the governments of the world, for the most part, work together on securing commercial traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hey,
unless you're out
what do you think of private ships defending themselves, putting on weapons and stuff? Because I know there's been laws, especially going by Somalia, where there was Somalian pirates and stuff. And there was a lot of laws on the sea that they couldn't defend themselves with weapons.
No, I think every ship should have some form of defense. That's just me. I mean, fuck maritime law. I thought it was, well, I guess back in the day it was fucking you're on your own, but now you're right. There is international laws, international maritime laws.
No, I think if governments are going to protect the ships, then they should be allowed to have armed personnel on that ship to repel any boarding party that tries to enter, especially going through any of those dangerous territories.
Absolutely. Captain Phillips, that story should have never happened.
Yeah, thank God for the Navy SEALs on that one. I've listened to him tell the story of how all that went down.
Seeing how many people had to die before the Navy SEALs got there, and they could have been prevented, right?
If they would have been allowed to carry weapons for self-defense, yeah.
Right, yeah. And they should, because even back in the day, when the pirates and stuff were going on, or the Caribbean, I know that's fucking, I'm being facetious, but like they had cannons and swords, right? And their little powder pistols and all that good stuff, right? I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean that's just what they show in the movies.
Cannons, swords, spears, bows and arrows, whatever.
Right.
Yep. So, but back to the actual like governmental structure. So like nothing in the federal government, like even the ratification of constitutional amendments is not a democratic process, because it has to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House, and then 2/3 of the states legislatures also have to approve it.
Okay.
That's not a 51% vote. So yes, the Constitution can be changed, but again, it has to take a massive effort to get everybody on the same page.
Right. Which would be what, a convention of states?
No, actually, the Senate can propose a constitutional amendment. If 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House vote on it, then all of the states legislatures vote on it also. And if 2/3 of the House and Senate in those states, 2/3 of the state ratify it, then it becomes a constitutional amendment. That was the problem for all the amendments that exist. And yeah, it's kind of funny if you look at prohibition and how quick the sentiment flipped. Because like 1 minute they're all 1 minute they're all against alcohol, and 2/3 of the states voted against it. And then 10 years later, 2/3 of the state voted to make it legal again.
So let's go over how the House and the Senate was in the originally. How were the members put into office? Because it wasn't always the population voted for both of them. I mean, that changed.
I know the Senate was chosen. The House was always a direct vote by the population.
Yes, the House was, but the Senate was not.
The Senate was selected by the state legislatures, weren't they?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yep, they changed that. Find out when they changed that. That's my question, because it was not a direct vote from the people like it is now. The people did not have a direct say by vote on their senators.
So I just typed in House and Senate formation. We'll see what happens. Okay, whitehouse.gov. We'll see how true this gets us.
Yeah, make sure you put in that .gov, not .com.
Well, it was a Google search.
So prior to its passage, senators were chosen by state legislature. The Constitution, as it was adopted in 1788, made the Senate an assembly where the states would have equal representation. Each Senate legislature would elect 2 senators for 6-year terms. And that was, I think that was, let's see, that was the 17th Amendment, direct election of the U.S. senators. So in 1913, that changed with the 17th Amendment. But before 1913, it was chosen by the state legislatures, not by the people. So it was our representatives that we voted in office would go in and select 2 senators to send to the U.S. Senate to represent the state.
Which made it even harder to get that consensus to pass laws.
So do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing to change it to direct voting?
I would have liked it. I
Sorry,
would have
what was
liked
that?
it if they left it.
If they left it alone,
Yeah.
so kept it in the hands of the
Like
state senate or
what
state.
everything our government has done for the last 150 years has proven that the framers were wiser than any politician we're ever going to have again.
Right.
Like, I mean,
No,
that's it. Like,
I think it should have stayed as it was when the founders founded the Constitution. It should have kept it in the hands of the state legislature.
I agree. 100% I agree. So now as far as when you get down to the local level, like city councils are decided by popular vote. The mayorships are just decided by popular vote. Some places sheriffs are elected, some places they're appointed.
Yeah.
Same thing with judges. Some are elected, some are appointed. Like federal judges are all appointed by the president.
Yeah.
And then they're confirmed by the House and Senate.
Yeah. Which, man, we have so many judges now. That's a full-time job, just confirming the judges.
Which is one of the best things Trump ever did, was he really went into appointing federal judges. That's one thing.
We had like such a huge backlog. Didn't get any cases.
Yeah, a lot of the past presidents did not put a priority on electing federal judges. And so there was a huge backlog of open positions, which Trump went all in. That was the main thing he went in on, was getting federal judges put in place.
Right.
If you guys are wondering,
and that's one thing. I think that's one reason I always said I thought Trump was saying a lot of the stuff he was doing was to distract away from this other stuff that was going on, that he was trying to get in, which was federal judges. Doggy.
Oh,
we got a couple.
Say that again, Rob. You went out.
I said we have a couple guests on the podcast today. So anyway, yeah, like I said, so the state houses and senates are generally elected the same way ours are. And I think even back in the day, I think some of them were even like appointed by local leaderships to their state houses, but I'd have to go back and dig in some more on that. But I think because originally, I think all the states legislatures were formed exactly the same as the U.S. government. So the other thing that I think is interesting is how quickly our Congress, they talk about all the powers of Congress, how quickly they abandon their responsibilities.
What do you mean by that?
And by that, I'm referring to the fact that they'll like write a law creating a bureaucracy and then hand all their power over to the bureaucracy.
What do you mean?
Does that make sense?
Are you talking about like the EPA and the Department of Education?
OSHA, yeah. So, and then a lot of times what they end up doing is the president ends up by executive order writing laws through the bureaucratic agencies. So that's why they
your bandwidth is low.
And my power is low. That's probably why my bandwidth is low. I just got plugged in before I died.
That's
so yeah. So the now I lost my train of thought.
So the president is signing into laws for the bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah. So outside of the executive orders, which get kicked back all the time because like the executive authority has to be expressed in the Constitution. If it's not expressed in the Constitution, then Congress has to give them that authority. And then it's the same thing with the bureaucracies. If they create an agency to take care of something, they have to specify exactly what they have the power to do. And many of these agencies like completely exceed their power.
So like
So,
the Supreme Court just shot down some of the EPA's what do they call that? They just shut down them being able to dictate, carbon emissions, right?
right.
The Supreme Court just rejected a case. I don't know what case it was, but we all know that happened, right? And the reason for that is for what you just stated, right?
Yeah, because they had the mandate to oversee soil contamination and water pollution, right, and to set acceptable levels for environmental contaminants, okay, including air pollution. But there was no mandate in their charter that was written by the legislatures giving them the authority to regulate carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And why? Because what are carbon emissions? It's carbon dioxide. Well, here's the funny thing. Every single person emits carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Is there anything on this planet that uses carbon dioxide?
Trees, isn't it amazing?
Plants?
Wait, what?
Trees.
Trees?
Plants.
Like plants?
Yeah.
Is that like part of shit? I think I remember this from when I was in like 6th grade or 5th grade, like part of photosynthesis?
What?
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, dude, I knew I was paying attention in school for a reason.
Just for this moment on a podcast.
That's crazy. I wonder how many other people are like, oh wow, that makes sense. Which would explain kind of why the hole in the ozone over Antarctica is smaller now or completely gone.
Well, because they discovered the hole in the ozone layer, but they don't know how long it's been there, or if it's naturally occurring, or if it reoccurs. Now they were able to test that chlorofluorocarbons do indeed bind with ozone, and that would be contributing to it, but they don't know if it was there to begin with.
Right. Well, when did we start making chlorofluorocarbons? And that's a man-made thing, right? Chlorofluorocarbons.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's, well, I mean, so some degree of environmental controls is good,
right?
But the legislature has to, like, if the legislature wants the EPA to set the levels of an emission of X substance, they have to give them that specific authority and then let them set that substance. They don't get to decide other stuff as a substance and regulate that.
Right. And
you get what I mean?
Yeah, that's tyrannical. Or dictator.
Yeah. And so they were able to, and like OSHA can regulate what was given a mandate to regulate what protective equipment is required, but like that's to protect the individual workers, but pushing a vaccine didn't work because they had no mandate for regulating or mandating vaccines because it was nowhere in their charter and nowhere in any law that the Congress has passed since to mandate any sort of healthcare.
Sort of like the whole recommendations for vaccines and what they're trying to do with the schools.
Yeah.
Those are just recommendations.
But the schools are tougher because we've always had vaccine requirements for schools.
Right, but we didn't we didn't have to. It went through a process first, right?
Right. Well, but the mandates for the vaccines are for actual vaccines.
Right, not drugs, experimental drugs.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the mandates in schools are for fully FDA approved vaccines
that have gone through at least 10 years of testing.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
research, peer reviewed. This stuff is totally off.
The ones who are dancing around have temporary emergency use authorization.
Right.
They are not FDA approved vaccines.
Which makes no sense.
We got to be careful about
Vaccine
that.
does more harm than the virus.
Mm-hmm. Probably shouldn't have said that, but
Well, but they're not. Like, I mean, hey, I'm triple vaxxed. I've got 2 shots and a booster.
Yep, same with me. Just
I've got none.
So
if I was not married and back up in Alaska, I would not have been vaccinated. But for my wife and for my family,
and my girls halfway around the world, I needed to be vaccinated.
Yep.
So
until now,
I made my decisions.
I pray for you guys every day.
Word. I think my heart's no.
No, that's your lungs.
I was gonna make a joke that would definitely get us kicked off YouTube. Anyway. Yeah, I smoke too much. That's it. Come here.
Well,
this dog is like just like making me feel so guilty if I look away from him.
Especially those crappy ass cigarettes you were smoking in the Philippines. Jeez.
Oh my God, those Royals! Holy crap!
Cheap cigarettes.
You should feel guilty if you don't pay attention to that dog. That dog is your job right now.
That dog is cute, right?
Well, you're there with that dog for a reason, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that dog is your job, not this.
So, well, the dog was getting attention, but then like he laid down and then I couldn't reach him. And then he starts whimpering because I'm not petting him.
Get up here on my lap. You're not a donkey. You'll be safe. Oh, I mean, caribou.
Hey, it would be nice if we could make this the job, though.
Reindeer.
They got it to be domesticated.
Caribou.
No, he likes the domesticated ones. They don't put up as much of a fight.
They're a little more tame.
Yeah, they're domesticated.
More practiced.
Brad, God bless you. God bless you. Anyway. Wow. We really get off there somewhere sometimes. Anyway, what was this podcast about again? Oh yeah, so structure of government. So yeah, so basically executive orders, like I don't even get how they get away with them. Like I don't think they should be allowed at all.
Well, it's because
like granted, I like some of Trump's.
Well, to be fair, Trump did sign a lot of executive orders, not nearly as many as Biden did on his first day, or former Vice President Joe Biden did. I didn't
say that I don't like Biden doing them. I don't like presidents doing them. I don't care who the president is.
Yeah,
we do not have a dictator. We do not have there should be no executive orders.
Exactly. No, and I agree with you.
Yeah. Now, the only thing that an executive order should apply to is the majority of Trump's executive orders were exactly that. They're executive orders giving orders to the executive branch. But like this executive order about student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not giving an executive order to an executive branch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Please explain to me what executive branch is the student loan branch or the student loan agency.
The Department
you know
of
what
Education? I don't know.
But they don't issue student loans.
Yeah,
they guarantee loans.
Which should be dissolved.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then like
back to the states to decide how to teach our own children.
And you know, you were actually we were talking about like the schools and whether or not they should be government funded. I heard it in another podcast. What was it? Oh, the comment section.
Oh, with Brett Cooper.
So, and it was, yeah, Brett Cooper. I like her. She's cool. Anyways, but she made the comment that like, as soon as she said it, I'm like, that's right. And that was that schools were never public until like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And the longer we've had public schools, the worse our education has got.
Yeah, because the government can't build anything. Have you seen the roads in Texas?
Yeah. Schools were locals. Towns and cities were responsible for educating their children.
Right. The communities.
Yeah. Now I'm fine handing it back to the state governments and letting the state decide how to educate their children.
So that charger's fast as heck. So I'm going to move over to the other dog now, so he doesn't feel left
But
out.
I'm 100% behind vouchers. I mean, hand it back to the states. And the states should have vouchers where the parents can decide how to educate their children.
Absolutely.
I want the government out of it entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've turned schools into indoctrination camps.
Well, Brad, are you like Brad? Do you think all government should be out of it, or do you think the state government should still be involved?
I think it should be local governments.
Yeah.
Yeah. The local government should
it be city or state?
I think city and state should work together on it.
I agree. City and state. The state should be there to help the cities decide how to run their school systems.
What about the rest of the county and the cities?
So, hey,
Well,
Brett,
state
can
and
you
the
pull
city
up
should be
some
working
sort of
together.
chart showing educational performance in the U.S. over the last 100 years?
No, geez. You're going to have the biggest drop in history just over the last 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Well, my guess is the drop isn't that big when you compare it to a graph that I'm pretty sure it looks like this anyway.
Well, yeah.
Like from
100
years ago when the federal government got.
Can you say that again?
He wants you to look up the
I don't know how you word it, but something about.
Go ahead, Rob.
So, I mean, I know our literacy rates, well, they used to be up. I don't know where they're at now. Like, I see a lot of people that are supposedly literate, but they can't read or write.
Like 136 for world ratings. It's just sad. And that's one big thing I think the Republicans screwed up on, is not by pushing this look what my competition, the person I'm going against did. They closed down the schools. Look at where our kids are at now compared to 2 years ago.
One 120 years of American education, a statistical portrait.
I mean, that's a huge example of why you should have voucher system, because public schools closed down for almost 2 years, even though what the Michigan governor said, I closed it down for 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever. No, 2 years. 2 years. The schools were closed down for 2 years, but yet the private schools were still open. They closed for what, maybe 2 weeks during this whole thing. Private Catholic schools, Christian schools, they stayed open. They had very few cases of the virus, and their kids didn't fall behind.
I don't like that.
Oh, and aren't those private institutions?
What?
Aren't those private institutions?
Yeah, private Catholic and Christian schools. Private.
Yeah.
Private.
So
there.
So here's my thing. If we get rid of public schools and flip them all private, teachers that are busy teaching about transgender identity,
or the
instead of
1610 project,
math, that math teacher would be fired. I'm just saying.
Yeah. They're there to teach math. They're there to teach science. They're there to teach English or Spanish or French or German.
And here's another thing I think funny, that we only allow people that go to school to be teachers.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me our educational system was like one of the best in the world when we let people that actually did something teach.
Yeah. People that lived their lives. Just like we were saying, politicians were never meant to be career politicians. They were supposed to be people that lived a life, did something with their life, built something, and then come in to make a difference in the government. Well, same thing with education. I mean, you have these college professors teaching business that have never actually run a business. Most of them have never run an actual business. So the kids come out of these classes thinking they know all about business, and they get into the real world Like, whoa, this isn't what I learned. Didn't you get some business degree or something, Rob?
A few.
So how did your business degrees compare to what you actually see in reality?
My realization about the business degrees is they do a really good job teaching you how to read reports and understand reports.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actual management of companies, it's a lot of theory that doesn't work in practice. Which is why when you never see anybody come straight out of business school and become a success in business.
Yeah, they have to build up their experience to learn how to actually manage.
The irony is you go to school to get a business degree so you can learn how the government interrupts and interferes with business.
Amen, brother.
And how to structure a business to operate within the bureaucracy.
Amen. Hey, Brad,
so,
hiding it?
So, but yeah, no, my first degree is accounting, like principles of accounting standards. It was actually pretty useful for a practical application in retail management because I had a deeper understanding of where the numbers came from when I had P&L responsibilities. The marketing, completely useless to me.
Yeah.
Like never used it, but I got some pretty good history of marketing that was interesting. But beyond that, it was useless for what I did. And then the MBA, like, yeah, I think they need a lot more focus on people management. So, but by the time I got that, it was just because I was applying for a position that required it. So, like, I got tired of not being able to apply for positions that required an MBA, so I went for it. Yeah. That's it. Like, I didn't see a lot of value in the degrees. And at that point, like, I think my 10 years of business experience served me more than a year and a half working on that. Well, it ended up being like 2.5 years because that was like right when I went through my divorce. So there's lots of breaks in there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, hands-on training is one of better than in classroom training. That's why when I was going to school for mechanics to learn how to repair vehicles, we always had lab time. We had hands-on treatment or training. I mean, and what we did was because we were at a community college, we would take in customer cars, people that would, need their cars fixed that needed their cars fixed. We had more than one car so that we could, take our time with the car and get it fixed correctly. So we would do brake services, oil change, we would do alignments, but also we would do diagnostics as well. Like we had a police cruiser that came in that was set up for sliding, so you could learn how to control the car.
Hey, Rob.
It was pretty sick.
Hey, Rob. So early years in 1867, Congress passed a law creating the first education department, which focused primarily on collecting education statistics in the Department of the Interior. The Department of Education did not exist as a full-scale cabinet level agency until 1979.
Yeah.
So look at what the pandemic did to fourth and eighth graders in math.
Yeah.
I mean, that's only 26% of eighth graders knew how to do math well in 2022.
Wow.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Like fourth graders were better at math than eighth graders.
Well, this is what the Republicans should have brought out in front of them at every single, they should have advertised this big time, just the scale here, just in math, and wait until you see what reading is doing in science. I mean, the statistics have dropped, and most of it's been, from what I understand, minorities.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this online education system that they tried to push for 2 years just did not work.
Well, I think a lot of that had to do with why so many seats and counties were flipped red in New York.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Long Island.
there was a red wave in New York.
Yeah, well, Long Island, New York. There was a red tsunami on Long Island.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a reason that the most successful students in America today are taught at home, homeschooled,
Right.
not in public schools. I think it's homeschooled, then private schools, and then public schools are the lowest rated in the nation. Private schools, then charter schools, then probably public schools. If I had to guess, if we could find statistics on that I think that's how I would probably rate. Which goes back to our whole thing of anything run by the government does not work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what the government's really efficient at?
Just
Finding
excuses.
excuses
Stuff.
Screwing
their own
things
pocket.
That yeah, good point.
They're good at taking the taxpayers' money and putting it in their own pockets, one way or the other.
The global higher education market is worth 13.7 billion. Around 244 million children are out of school. 94% of countries adopted remote learning policies. What are they going to do, when people like Elon Musk who say you can't work from fucking home anymore?
I think a lot of people are losing their jobs, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. But a lot of people were working for Twitter at home, and he said you have to spend at least 40 hours in the office a week.
Yeah. My friend's back.
I mean, I can understand that.
So can I.
He's trying to rebuild the company. He wants the people there so he can see what they're doing and have some kind of control.
I would debate what's it show our literacy rate is.
Uzbekistan and Ukraine are like the top two.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
We're not even on this one that I can see. South Sudan, Chad.
Yeah. Is it just me or all the top 10 former Soviet republics? Oh, except for San Marino, right?
Yeah. Latvia, Estonia, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan.
Stands.
Yeah, there's a lot of stands in there.
All the stands are former republics except for Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Which is not on that list. They're on the other list.
Yeah.
And that's because they don't allow half their population.
Oh yeah, well that's funny. They don't show America at all.
Yeah, because we're between the highest and the lowest. We're not the lowest, but we're not the highest.
Right. Well, they probably don't want us to see that anyways.
Dude, what is the big deal about preschool? Like, nobody went to preschool really when I was a kid.
I never did. Mom thought 12 years of forced school was enough.
I think I did.
Hard to remember that far back.
Barely. I remember going
70 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was longer than that. Wait, no, how many years is a score?
Like 40?
Yeah.
No, wait. It's got to be like 20. I'm trying to think because so yeah, I think it's 20 because the Emancipation Proclamation would have been about 80, almost 90 years after our independence.
My God. Why is this fucking even a statistic? Around 22% of teens report being bullied during the school year. I think it's more than that.
Yeah, I think so too. The other 78% were listening when the bully said that they'd kick their ass if they said anything.
81% of male and 87% of female teenagers received formal sex education on how to say no to sex.
No. Dude, that was tough.
All right. Oh, come on. Everybody's doing it. To caribou.
I remember I actually dated a girl that tried saying that to me, and I said, then go have sex with them.
I don't know.
Man, I'm just like thinking back, remembering how crazy life on the farm was. Like campouts in the barn or out in the back pasture.
Well, hell. Not finding a whole lot.
Like the time I called my stepdad from the party because the party got broken up by the cops, so he went and picked everybody up in the van and like relocated us to the barn. My stepdad was a really responsible parent. That was some education.
The state of United States education staff. What? That's all they give us?
How are we getting into education statistics?
I don't know.
We already know
that academic performance of homeschooled students. Homeschooled students graduate college at a rate of 66.7%. That's 10% higher than students from public schools.
10%. Well, I mean, like what is the percentage of the population that's being homeschooled?
Homeschoolers score 15 to 30% more than students in public schools in the standardized academic achievement exams.
Well, what's the percentage difference between homeschoolers and non-homeschoolers?
As far as how many kids are homeschooled?
Yeah, compared to how many are not.
Well, I can say that supposedly about 9 million Americans said they had attended homeschool at some point in their lives.
Well, the last 2 years, I'm sure it was more than that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But no, I mean, but seriously, even before then, like you could say that. I mean, there's a lot more people being sent to public schools than were being homeschooled, right? So then you could make a case for the nuclear family and one person working, right? Because if you're being homeschooled, then odds are only one person is working in the home, right? And the nuclear family is together, meaning mom's taking care of the kids and teaching them school, or dad staying home, whichever of the two. Not that it has to be dad only working, because I'm sure there's plenty of families out there that are not. And then most of the other kids that have to go to school, the only reason that they have to go to school is because our nation has made it to where you have to have two people in the household working just to stay afloat, even, right?
Right. So I think I could probably get back on board with public education if we get rid of the union, so we could get rid of bad teachers.
Right, exactly. And
Okay,
give
you get rid of
teachers an
the-
incentive to want to be better teachers.
You get rid of the unions and you give the control back to the states and local governments.
Because
Yeah,
right now,
unions were put in place, right, to keep the companies from treating their employees bad.
like
But now it's just the unions treating the employees bad. They don't have the
Right.
employees'
If we can
backs.
look up the statistics for the voting from this last voting session, from what I understand, the school, the local
school boards?
governments voted in way more Republicans in the school board
Oh
than
yeah.
Democrats.
No, and
nationwide.
that's another part of the red wave that nobody's
'cause they
paying
had-
attention to.
They had enough with
hey,
the
I'm gonna add some-
Democrats.
a statistic that I saw since our little election coverage that we did.
Mhm.
I was awfully hard on Trump, but didn't realize that he actually his record in this election
It was
like
pretty
100,
damn, it was pretty damn good.
181 and 8.
Yeah. So I mean, dude, there was a red wave. It's just the people thought that the red wave was going to be in Congress. But in all actuality, what we needed was what happened in New York.
Well, no, I mean
What
between the
happened?
House and Senate, 118.
Yeah. So we were already expecting the House. The Senate is still up for grabs. We'll know that because I guess for some reason we know that Mark Kelly won, but Carrie Lake, they still haven't figured out how to make up her votes. So, so we won't know that until Monday or Tuesday. But for some reason, we know that Mark Kelly is the guy in the Senate now. For some reason,
The margins were a lot bigger.
Yeah,
and I mean Kelly is he is kind of like local legend, astronaut, blah blah blah. You know what I mean?
yeah. But dude, there's still some fishy stuff that went on down there, and
Oh God, yeah.
but so. And Trump is already being Trump about it and saying that there was cheating. And, I can't say that he's wrong. But yeah, I think people over expected shit. And I think Ben Shapiro, they were just looking for a reason to jump on the hate Trump bandwagon. And,
I still think Trump has a lot of blame in what happened, just because he won't shut up and he keeps talking.
I don't think that has a lot to do with anything. And like Rob was
disagree.
just saying, a lot of people that he supported won.
And it doesn't that yes, because he threw his support behind a lot of guys that were already in the lead. Before he stepped in, a lot of the people that he threw his support behind was already winning before he.
Okay,
but
hold
the
on.
problem I've had with Trump is the same thing I said from the beginning. He keeps freaking bringing up this whole election denial crap. And yes, you can say everybody at this point knows that he thinks the election was stolen. And
I don't think he's the only one that thinks that.
And a lot of people agree with him. But move on. Say, what can we do to fix it? Instead of just saying things that are never going to happen, like get rid of the election and let's have a new election. It's 2 years in. Move on. It's in the past. What can we do?
Okay, I haven't heard him talking about that in a while. Okay, so I think
yes, I've heard him several times.
The last two rallies he didn't say anything about that. But anyways.
So what I do think the Republican Party had a bigger problem of in this election was McConnell like intentionally not supporting Trump candidates.
Yes.
Because he would rather lose than win with Trump candidates.
Right. But to be fair, no, I agree with you 100%.
Brian, your state's a good example. Because in Alaska, he was backing Murkowski against
another Republican.
What's her name? Shabaka?
Yeah, Shabaka, who ended up winning.
Shabaka.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. I guess it's still open.
It's not over because nobody has 50% yet.
Right.
So when they're done counting, then they start counting the second round, right?
The bottom line is the candidates should have, regardless of whether or not they had Trump, they should have been out there promoting their message regardless. the Republican, like Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, they shouldn't have cut funding from them. They should have funded them, especially the ones that were the candidate. They should have been helping fund them, and Trump should have as well. And that's they just came up short. And the Republican, the RNC has a lot to blame for that, and Trump can take some of that blame too. But the candidate themselves should have also got out there and spoke to the people as much as they could, like Kerry Lake did.
McConnell wasted what, $9 million in Alaska because he wanted to defeat a Trump-supported candidate. So threw money behind Murkowski, which he should have put in towards Washington or Arizona or somewhere else.
Agreed.
But we can all sit here and pass blame on it, or we can take a solace in the fact that we won a lot of districts that we should not have won by any means, and we did.
Oh, New York.
Yeah, New York. I mean, Florida, Dade County. You can give all of that credit to DeSantis, right?
Yeah. Well, and the candidates, they're getting out there and talking about the message.
Right. And that's what they did. And the fact is that Florida stood up for families, just like Virginia, just like Texas. Boy, Texas was fucking big time. I mean,
so I wasn't going full-throated endorsement on Trump, but his record was still pretty good.
It was pretty good. And that's where the red wave came. Just because it didn't happen like everybody was expecting it to, everything that Ben Shapiro was projecting to happen did not happen. A lot of things Ben Shapiro has gotten wrong.
Yeah, but that's kind of elections these days.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody can figure out what's going to happen. And that's because they keep tinkering around because the Democrats keep tinkering around with the rules.
Right.
Because, I mean, we need to go back to an election day. But anyway, so back to the structure of our republic that's not a democracy. Like,
the only thing democratic about it is that we vote.
Yes. And even then, it's the scale of our democracy is so very limited. All we democratically vote for is representatives.
Right.
And the only exception is local measures, ballot measures, and statewide measures.
Right.
Like, but beyond at the federal level, there is no democracy. Like the United States of America are supposed to be 50 independent states that are not governed over, but coordinated through a federal republic. Like, and that's the issue, and it's kind of Lincoln's fault, actually. Like, in a way, like in his haste to preserve the Union. Like, I mean, it's a good thing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we fought the good fight and preserved the Union and ended slavery, but like it set the precedence for an overpowering federal government. Does that make sense? So, and even in that, that's like something that Democrats can never get. That even something well-intended can have negative consequences.
Right.
And even doing the right thing can have negative consequences.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, the Democrat Party is still a thing.
Yeah. That's a negative intention and a negative consequence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at, I don't know how they did it, but they fooled people. They fooled people. I have this Asian guy, and he's from, I can't remember where he's from exactly, but he's like literally American, but he had no idea that the Democrats were the ones that founded the KKK, and he voted for Biden, and he's having some buyer's remorse.
Yeah. So here's a funny thing about it though. If you take the youth vote back down to the numbers of even 20 years ago, Like, go back before Obama. If you go back to that point, like, Republicans have like 70 seats in the Senate. The Democrats are getting really good at bribing young people to go to the polls.
Right. And the single women voted overwhelmingly Democrat during this last midterms, which we had a problem with. The Democrats did good because they scared all these single ladies for some reason into, thinking that they weren't going to have a choice in what they do with their body. And I hate when people say that the government shouldn't, that a woman's not going to have a choice in what she does with her body. And she's always going to have a choice unless she's raped. She's always going to have a choice in what she does with her body. Am I wrong?
No.
I mean, look at what they're doing with their faces and nipples and clitorises and all that other BS.
Which it's another life that we're taking into account here. It's not just.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's this woman that I saw on Facebook. It was disgusting. John Burke posted it. It posted this picture of this woman who turned her fallopian tubes into a necklace. I'm like, what the literal F? Who does that?
Yep.
That's disgusting.
That's disgusting. It's terrible. What do you tell somebody when they ask you what that is? And they're like, oh, that's my fallopian tubes. And they're like, ugh, why would you do that? Why are you noticing?
That's the physical representation of my mental illness.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be removed from society. God, that would be like Dahmer running around with fucking the penises that he cut off in a necklace,
I would say it could be argued that leftism is a mental illness.
Yes, it is.
So Brian's right. They are people. They're just mentally ill.
Yeah, mentally ill people.
And they're all members of a cult.
I wasn't saying that they weren't people. I'm saying that they're people with bad ideas. They think that we're bad people with ideas.
So I don't think they have ideas. I think they're just. So I think the majority of the leftist voters are uninformed. Case in point, John Fetterman. Case in point, dead guy elected. Case in point, Biden elected.
Dude, you know how many people are talking about that they voted for a dead guy? They elected a dead guy? Like, what? What is going on?
Dead people rock too.
That's literally like what people are talking about on all the podcasts I'm watching. They're like, these fucking idiots in Pennsylvania. I'm not surprised Oz didn't fucking win the votes. Like, you got a guy who doesn't look like he's from Pennsylvania and looks like a television star, and then you got a guy who looks like he just came out of Pittsburgh.
Well, and in all fairness, like, Oz made it clear that he is an outsider over and over, like, including like telling him to go do something. I forget what it was, but go do something after the
before the Pittsburgh game.
Before the Pittsburgh game when they weren't playing.
Yeah, go grab 10 voters after the Pittsburgh game and go vote. Yeah. And they're like, dude, it's their bye week. Oh my God.
Was he murdered?
So anyway. So on the original topic of the structure of our republic, did anybody have any other like side points they want to throw in on that?
Nope.
No, I mean,
there's
a difference between a democracy and what we have as a government.
And every democracy has ended in dictatorship. That's the one thing I'll point out.
Right.
Like, every actual democracy ends in dictatorship. But like, even like, yeah, you look at like Israel and England, like, they're looked at as democracies, but their prime minister is not elected by the people. The ruler of their country is not elected by the people.
It's through Parliament, right?
By the House of Commons.
Right. And because none of the parliament, or because there's more parties, none of them have a majority. And so to become the prime minister, you have to get an accumulation, a coalition of different factions to support you. I like that.
Well, that's like Jerusalem too. I mean,
oh yeah, that's Israel. That's what I was talking about.
They have a Muslim party, which is like what?
Anyway, so yeah, so we covered all that. I'm curious to see what happens, but if we've covered it all, I mean, that was kind of the point, just to like dig into the fact that we're not a democracy. And I'm tired of people like saying it, because that means we have ignorant people voting that don't understand how our. That's my opinion. If you don't know how the government works, how can you successfully vote for the representatives if you don't even understand how your representative government works?
Right.
So what are you trying to share?
The difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy. The USA has been a constitutional republic since 1789. A continual republic is a state in which the head of the state and other officials are representatives of the people and must govern within an existing constitution. The republic, executive, legislative, and judicial powers are separate into distinct branches. This is a difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy. A democracy is run by the people, and a republic is run by the laws of the Constitution. Computer is being slow. Oh, stupid fucking thing. Exit. A constitutional republic is a system of laws to protect citizens and contain government. Tyranny of democracy is not an idle statement, like what you were just saying. Democracies end up turning into a tyrannical government.
Yep.
51.1% may force its will on 49.9% in a democracy. This is on display in the House of Representatives' current impeachment, which are controlled by a Democratic majority. The Democratic Party has 3 blah, blah, blah. I've already gone over all the way down to Elizabeth Warren. It is clear that swearing an oath of office means little to these seekers of the Democratic presidential nomination. The Constitution, which is the prime law of the land, which they swore an oath to defend, means less. The elimination of the nation's constitutional republic's electoral college would allow 144 counties with half the population to override the will of over 3,000 counties with the balance of the votes. LA County has more voters than most Western states.
All right. Sorry for our viewers and listeners. I don't know how good I'm going to be able to blend this back together. But we had a little technical difficulty here, so we had to pick it back up. So, but we're just getting ready to wrap it up anyway. So, Brian, you got any final thoughts for us today?
Well, the fact is, I'm sick and tired of people saying the democracy. And I still don't know why we are always trying to build democracies overseas when we don't even have one here. The fact is, we are a constitutional republic. There's a reason we're a constitutional republic. The only democracy in the U.S. is local city governments, and that's it. Anything larger than that, state or federal, is a constitutional republic. And that's why we have our constitution by federal and by state. So we have a set of rules that we have to stick to and follow. And we don't interpret it just because the times change. We read it, and that's what the law is. So we do not live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic, period. It's that simple.
All right, Brad, what you got?
Well, I mean, I think Brian summed it up pretty damn good. But yeah, we are a constitutional republic. I joined the military to protect and serve the people of the Constitution and to protect the Constitution. I live by the Constitution. I will die by the Constitution. And we need to look and interpret the Constitution as it is written. And we need to quit talking about democracy, because we, like Brian said, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. And the Democrats keep trying to push democracy to keep people from thinking that we live in a constitutional republic, that our Constitution is based and founded on the Constitution. So again, stop talking about democracy. Democracy is never anywhere on the ballot. Democracy is never in one of those boxes that you check in the voting process. So forget democracy. Remember the Constitution. The Constitution empowers us, and the Constitution is the reason why we are what we are. Thank you very much.
And for me, we've covered the form of the government. Here's my problem. We definitely cannot own this country when we have a representative republic. And even in the representative format, people are too stupid to find out who their candidates are before they vote for them. Be they dead, be they a vegetable, be they a tangerine. Y'all make stupid decisions when you're voting anyways. And for the vegetable, you take your pick, whether I mean Biden or Fetterman.
Yeah, you guys voted in a Sasquatch.
What? Did you say a fat squatch?
A Sasquatch. A Sasquatch.
Sasquatch in a hoodie. So, yeah, I think at any given time in our country, 50% of the country is idiots, and they have D's next to their vote. So, yeah, we don't want a democracy. All it takes is 50.1% of people to agree for very bad things to happen, and slavery was a good example of that. Anyway, so yeah, just I think what the biggest threat to our democracy is uninformed voters, right? Because we don't have a democracy. People don't even realize that. And then when they are voting for the representation, they're not voting for people that are going to actually represent them. Because I know damn well all you people that voted D did not vote because you think we need more inflation. You did not vote that way because you think we need more crime. You did not vote that way because you don't think 5 million illegal immigrants in 2 years is enough. You guys voted that way because you're not aware of policy. You're not aware of the stances of the politicians. So you're uninformed voters. And until you get informed, it's too dangerous to have a democracy. And once you are informed, you won't want one. So, revelers, thanks again for joining us and listening to us. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Then send it to a friend and tell them to hit the subscribe button. And then have them send it to a friend and have them hit the subscribe button. We want you guys subscribing. We want to keep sharing content with you. We all have fun doing this show. That's the main point. But like as we're watching, like our viewership is growing. Like the last week is a third of our all-time views. So like it's absolutely amazing how quick we're growing. Thank you guys. Like keep subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. What was that, Brad?
I was just saying, stop it with telling them our fucking analytics.
Give them
Dude, that's awesome. We're accelerating.
Yeah, it's awesome, but they don't need to know. That's not what they're tuning in for. I understand it's great, but they don't care.
otrrvl at yahoo.com.
Oh, yeah. If you want to reach out to us directly, otrrvl at yahoo.com. And make sure you check us out on Rumble in case we get our videos pulled off on YouTube. You can always find us on Rumble, Robbie Brown. And then we're also on Spotify and iTunes. If you're not able to watch the whole show, you can just listen to it there. It is an advantage on Rumble is that it will play in the background also. So you can have that running in the background if you're not able to keep an eye on the program. So thanks again, revelers. We do this for you guys. We hope you enjoyed the show. Sorry it wasn't as heated as a debate as our election issue, but thought it was good since we just went through an election to make sure that we cover what kind of government we actually have.
Roger that. Also, comment, dude, and just because the comment sections are there doesn't mean you have to comment just on what we're talking about at the time. It would be great, but you can comment and we will reply to any of your comments. So whether it be
definitely.
Brian, whether it be me, whether it be Rob, we'll all comment. And it also helps with the algorithms too, to help get our word out there. So again, thank you guys for watching.
Thank you, revelers. You guys have a great night. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brad.
Later, guys. Good night.
Out.
Good night, guys.